Oh yeah, we can see you updating your YouTube settings.
Yeah, I saw that. Should have done that on the other screen, but all right, everyone's just filing in. Give us a moment here while we let people come in. I don't know if it was shared.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Rod says he hears echo. It's probably because I had my sound on. Mm-hmm. Moondy says it's too quiet. Can we turn the sound up somehow? Hello. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll give it about 1 more minute before we get started. By the way, I woke up a bit sick today, so if my voice sounds off or my brain's a bit foggy, I apologize. I think we'll probably get started here. I think people are still trickling in, but that's okay. We can let them do that as we get started. Today we're going to cover some updates on V3, product updates, and some upcoming releases. This is a bit out of order. Next we're going to cover research, and then path to decentralization, namely a DAO or alternatives. And then next we'll talk about operations and then partnerships. So getting started with V3 updates, we've made a significant amount of progress since the last community update. I'm very excited to say that the base exchange layer has been completed in form of a Python implementation. It works very well. It's very efficient. Anyone familiar with Big O notation? Most of the actions on the pool can be taken O of 1. Only trade takes more than that, and it can be done O of 1 in most cases. So it's very efficient. Um, we can say that the V3 is separated into basically three layers or three elements. The first is the base exchange layer, which you can think of as standard concentrated AMM layer. The next is a margin system, which is built on top of that exchange layer, which allows users to take out margin on the exchange or to lend margin to users on the exchange for yield. And then finally, we've got our native vaults layer, which is simply adaptable Lego box built for builders and liquidity providers, so they can plug it into the base exchange layer using strategies that they build or third parties build, and they can run automated vaults on top of the base exchange layer, so they benefit from the price discovery and liquidity benefits already on the base exchange. It's not separated like existing vaults in DeFi. And this Python implementation is completed as well as the margin system. So we're moving forward quite swiftly there. Very happy to see the speed that everyone on the team is moving things forward, and looking forward to continued progress. And of course, the front end designs are nearing completion as we finish the rest of the protocol. That means that we're starting to work on the final version of the product. Not just the underlying protocol. Moving on to product and upcoming releases. We have several releases planned before the end of the year. And then shipping capabilities basically shift fully to V3, as that's when timelines align. So before then, we can expect that vPremia will launch very, very soon. Could it be omni-chain? The answer is yes. Sorry to ruin the suspense. New markets. We're talking to data providers and other protocols about which tokens make the most sense to list and getting the data for that. If you follow Coin Alchemist Vkozy on Twitter, you'll see he's been mentioning data providers recently, trying to get them to support GMX and other markets. As soon as that happens, we can launch these new markets that we've got demand for. Upcoming after that, we've got some new vaults, Nox Vault specifically, which is a joint DOV project built on top of Premia that will launch on Premia. DOV stands for DeFi Option Vault, or Decentralized Option Vault, or 5 other different acronyms, however you want to plug in the letter for the D. But essentially, you can deposit your capital into a pool. Sorry, there's like an actual earthquake right now. Okay, I think it's over. That was crazy. Okay, so if you're not familiar, vaults are basically, they run a specific strategy, allowing users to deposit their liquidity into that vault and sell options each week according to that strategy. At the end of the week, they can withdraw their capital and any returns they've made. Next, we're working on the V3 systems paper release. To give you some insight there, the paper is basically complete. We're just working on final pieces now. And the release of that will be subject to strategic considerations, of course, as we plan our launch of V3. Along with the launch of V3, we'll be launching an SDK similar to existing SDKs in the ecosystem that allow you to easily plug into V3, plug into our exchange to provide liquidity or run bots on top of it. And along with this will come developer documentation to easily use these things. In addition, we've got Vaults.pro integration coming up. Planning to launch on top of V3. So if you're unfamiliar with this is a Vaults product that's partnered with Premia at the earlier in this year as they started building, and they're going to be plugging in options as options from Premia V3 as a selection for their users for their Vault strategies. And then finally, we've been talking with some other protocols and teams about specific quests, bounties, etc., that we can do moving forward to get people interested in the UI again, to get people coming back to the site daily, and then get people ramp up things as we move forward to V3. So some exciting things there. Stay tuned. Stay in the Discord and follow us on Twitter to make sure that you're around for those. Next, I'm going to cover research. And, until recently, research was the majority of what was happening on V3 as we are researching and developing the base layer protocol. And of course, the vaults and margin built on top. Now we are at the point where we are finalizing the white paper before handing it off to peer review. If you're familiar with Pareto principle, it's basically saying that the final 20% of work takes 80% of the time. And we have definitely seen that with the paper. We've been past the final 20% mark for quite some time, and I would say we are days away from finishing the paper. But again, release is subject to strategic considerations, so I'm not saying we're going to release it in days. Every section is complete. Where at this point, we're just simplifying notation and proofreading everything for correctness, matching it with the Python implementation, making sure there are no differences, etc. Like I said before, everything is fully implemented and tested in Python, the base layer exchange, margin, and vault. And we are adding more tests daily, including unit tests, integration tests, full system tests, acceptance tests, and then simulations, which are basically end-to-end tests across the full system. But these simulations have additional benefits. Essentially, what we're doing is we are running very in-depth simulations with all of the data that's all of the trades on Deribit options for the last 2 years, running it through our exchange, and seeing exactly what the expected behavior would be. This is just an extra layer of precaution to confirm that the exchange is behaving as expected. LPs and the protocol have the expected return profile, and the pool price is matching what we'd expect to see on external markets such as Deribit. Next, we're working on polishing the margin system. It's finalized, but there are some small details we're still working on. You can think of these as like governance variables, details that need to be finalized just to make things perfect, etc. And then, of course, we're still working on the initial vaults for V3 release. I mentioned we'd finished the initial vault interface, so now we can plug any sort of strategy into that. Now it's just a matter of deciding exactly which strategies we're going to launch with V3. If you have any suggestions or any demands for that, please post it in the community call or in the general channel. We definitely pay attention to your suggestions. And if not, we've got plenty of plans in place, and we think we know what we're going to go to market with anyway. And then finally, the research team is documenting the entire V3 system. So the general public can totally understand everything that's happening. The complexities of the concentrated liquidity range order system will be a lot simpler. And developers, of course, will understand it too and be able to build on top of it quickly is our hope with this documentation. Moving on, we'd like to show just the abstract of the paper, just to give you guys an idea of what to expect from V3. Well, we know we've given teasers over time, and of course there will be Medium posts and Twitter posts and more announcements and teasers upcoming as we get closer to release. But this is the abstract that will be going into the paper. I can't foresee any changes being made to it from this point. So here you go. Of course, there's a lot more of the paper done, but this is all I was allowed to show by the team. So I hope this gives you some idea of the advancedness of the V3 system and the complexities that we've solved therein. I'm now going to pass the call on to DK to talk about path to decentralization.
Cool, thank you. I'm going to mute you, Froggy, so if you say anything, only I can hear you. All right. Path to DAO. So, first step being vPremia, right? So vPremia is pretty much the proposed, is the foundational structure of the model that we're going to be building upon, right? You guys have seen the articles. You understand the structures. You lock stake premia for a certain period of time that is time weighted and volume or quantity weighted to output a certain score. I'm calling it influence, but that certain score is how you will interact with all the governance procedures, right? So that's foundational structure. Super quick to super soon to release on that. I expect that to be done definitely before the end of the year. And then as that comes out, we're going to be releasing the proposed protocol tokenomics for discussion and kind of agreement. Now, pretty minor alterations. I think that you'll be happy with them, but it kind of measures out some of the things that you're going to be seeing with this path to the DAO. Now, the DAO is not going to be something that is a big bang release. I think we're going to take a phased approach or phased release. We're calling them eras, but essentially what an era is where we layer on different mechanics into the governance structure, and then we can kind of continue to build out this cross cooperative functionality um, that we're pretty happy with, right? And we're super happy with V3. We've been spending, and because of the things that we are very excited about and that we anticipate with the release of V3, we've been spending a shit ton of time on governance research, right? So looking at all the monoliths, like all the mature models. Um, in our eyes, they kind of fall flat because they're pretty similar architectures, and there's so much room for innovation in this space. It doesn't have to be, the mature models that are out there right now, where some people would say it's a lot of governance theater and there's not a lot of control, and there is no real idea of like a centralized a decentralized governance, really, because it's like really the same group that's building most of the protocol enhancements. Um, and I would say in some of the grant-based DAOs, they're zero sum, right? So there are large amounts of money that are going to very specific groups, and DAOs are supposed to be emergent, right? You're supposed to have a blank canvas, and we're gonna have a blank canvas, right? So it doesn't have to be zero sum, like I said. Rising tide raises all boats. I think that we can achieve that in this structure and not be sending out these monolith and large allocations of millions and millions of tokens to single parties, um, but we can do it on a micro level, right? Now, with that said, some of these novel ideas kind of require legal entity structuring, um, and with the current governing laws, until there's more blockchain-based laws that are established, we think we found a way to remain nimble, but then also kind of protect the citizens, the holders of influence or holders of fee premia, and keeping them protection from liability, right? So we don't want an Uki situation. Obviously, we've been thinking about this for like months. The Uki situation is just coincidental in the timing, but that there's liability protection within the entire governance structure, but then also in this idea of sub DAOs or circles or pods, whatever you want to call them, um, that are autonomous organizations that are receiving funding that have a sole purpose in what they're trying to build as part of a greater purpose, right? So you're breaking up a purpose into multiple subsections. Those purposes don't have to be core engineering, right? They can be new products, obviously, but they can be governance related. They can be marketing related. They can be a whole course of different, skill sets um, that people have. That it's going to be an interactive culture. I would say is if you're creating interactions, then you're providing value to the ecosystem, and interactions is a very wide term. So there's going to be opportunities for everyone to kind of build together, right? Um, Ultimately, the end goal is kind of the contributor groups that exist now. There's roughly like 4 of them. The reason for those to exist right now is to reduce on coordination and direct costs of building cooperative networks, right? So that will play a pretty cool role, I would say, into this proposed structure because it just folds in naturally, right? Um, Now, more on the proposed plan. The goal is to release this proposed plan, kind of what the principles and the core values that we're trying to achieve together are, and then at the beginning of next year, um, we'll start it, right? So it's like we're maybe like 6 weeks away from getting off the ground on this, maybe 8 weeks away. So it's coming up pretty quick. We want to kind of lay out what the core tenets are. We've been meeting pretty regularly on our side, kind of discussing all these different ideas that we have. And once we kind of have some of that legal structuring in place, we can actually start taking action and actually executing, right? Next, operations, right? So operations is kind of making sure that we have the long-term vision of the organization as the core contributor group kind of exists right now. A lot of these places in the world, that regulation's not clearly defined, right? So our org structure is continuously evolving to make sure that we can navigate those waters where that regulation is not clearly defined. Um, like I said with the Uki thing earlier, we're happy that we kind of moved slow in the beginning and how we structure the organization to protect ourselves, and we continue to evolve. Um, Now that I kind of went through the path to DAO. Now I like the name Disco. It's not set up yet. It's not set in stone yet. Disco is a distributive cooperative organization. It is a type of DAO. I really like the idea of like Premia Disco or something like this. Obviously, we'll decide that as community, um, but the outline, like I said, has been prepared, and we'll be releasing those in iterations over the next coming weeks. My goal is to have some sort of publication material for people to look at, whether that be from just a research perspective or be from a core contributor group, kind of putting out knowledge on behalf of the entire protocol. It'll be in different pieces. So yeah, my goal is to get at least one piece of that publication out every 2 weeks, so that you guys can kind of see what we're trying to build, what the narrative is, what your place in that community will be. Now, in terms of just general hiring, operations, HR stuff, we've been becoming super mature as an organization. We're not the startup anarchy that we were 18 months ago. We have a pretty solid structure, more structure than we did at the startup anarchy phase. We're still hiring. We just hired 2 new hires, Ksenia and Suvik, marketing and QA DevOps. We still have a few more roles. We've been doing, apparently Super Day is not a quite well-known term, but we've been having days where we're interviewing 6+ people a day. We had 2 this week. We have 2 next week. Roughly, it's about 30 interviews to fill those different roles. I wouldn't say that they're critical path roles. They're more to kind of build out the team's bench strength and depth as we continue to mature. And I think that is it. Ksenia, you'll be hearing more from her soon. She's leading the marketing department. She's been leading a lot of the marketing efforts. Super strong candidate. Putting together a lot of cohesive plans and campaigns for the future. And then Suvik to kind of come in and make sure that our DevOps pipeline is streamlined, right? So that as we try to continue to increase the velocity of our code commits, that as a holistic system is governed, A, but then B, that everything's checked, and that we make sure that all the different modules that we're building interact properly, and so on. And then last, regarding partnerships, look, some of these super early. I'm going to keep it light here. We got a lot of cool stuff coming as we move into the V3 beta test and competitions around V3 beta testing. The ones that you hear about the soonest are probably going to be the ones that start with an L, especially layer 3, as we kind of alluded to previously, bounties, quests. Now, when we think of this core architecture for Disco or DAO, there's some things that are needed to build like a successful society, community, organization, cooperative, whatever. One of those ideas is this concept of like a social credit, not a social credit in the terms of what you may have known in the past, but a way for you to associate an on-chain wallet ID with different skill sets, right? So a trading skill set, maybe you're a liquidity provider, maybe you're a governance member, maybe you're committing code, maybe you spend a lot of time in the Discord having really meaningful discourse. As we set up the governance tools, maybe you're spending a lot of time writing proposals and getting interactions, right? So looking at all of that holistically, but not attributing it to a name, right? So we're based on this foundation of what you do in a meritocracy of like what you commit, what you create, is more than like how famous you are on Twitter, right? So with that said, layer 3 will be one of the first layers, no pun intended, of putting that all together. And having an on-chain identity and knowing that, okay, this person's really good at Solidity, or this person's really good at front end, or this person is involved in a lot of governance discussions across different DAOs. So you can see where their expertise is, and then as we create this pod circle structure, that are kind of organized units that are building some, for their mission is to create something for the overall purpose. You can easily check, without having to follow them for the last 2 years. You can easily check what their credentials are. One on here that's not on this page, and Froggy kind of alluded to that as well, is the Knox Vaults. Super close. Vault Pro as well. Knox is kind of finalizing their audit with their smart contracts. And that's all I got. We were at recent conferences. Messari, Token 2049, super productive, meeting a lot of devs, a lot of different organizations, market makers, just kind of setting the scene for our V3 release from a business perspective. Now, I think that's it. I'm going to close it down. Thank you for joining, and join us in the chat.